Over the last few years, we've bought old, unloved, clapped out bikes on Facebook Marketplace, fixed them up and gave them new homes, or at least put them back on the trail. Now, as we did these flip bike videos, the market changed and it became pretty hard to make a profit, but we kept fixing up bikes and we kept putting them back on the trail. And as you guys have told me, you're not really that interested in the profit part, you're interested in the fixing up the bike part. And so here are all the flip bike videos from earliest to latest up until this point. I cut out all the pricing and breakdown stuff so you can just watch me fix up bikes on a rainy day when you have nothing to do and hopefully learn something about bike repair. Enjoy. Thank you. It's poorly maintained, it's old, it's dirty, it looks terrible. This is gonna be a fantastic flip bike. For its day, this was a good bike. It's filled with Shimano quick release levers. The front wheel, the rear wheel, the seat post, these were more expensive to add to bikes and it made them easier to maintain. And bikes that are designed to be easy to maintain are meant to be ridden. It's also got some parts that were really good and even innovative for their day, like this Shimano BioPace chainring. This is a set of 3 oblong or oval chain rings. It's supposed to make it easier to climb hills, but I could see why it was listed for $70. It doesn't work. None of the gears shift. Brakes are not adjusted properly. It's dirty. The grips are cracked. Just by cleaning this bike and changing the cables and making it work, we could probably sell it for more than double what it was listed for, and we could market it as a vintage bike, not an old piece of crap bike, but a bike with like hipster points. And all these scratches and scuffs on the bike, well, that's patina. Now, I would never recommend using a pressure washer on a bike, but I'm gonna be real careful. Whoa! You see how fast that thing spun? All right, so we cleaned the frame and all the parts through and through. This looks like a completely different bike. Now we get to move on to the fun stuff. It doesn't shift gears. Now that we have all the gears and cables off of it, the only problem it could be is the shifter itself. And when I push this down, it's not clicking, it's not moving right. The one on the left doesn't work great, but it works. We're gonna have to dig in here and see what's going on in these shifters. These 2 levers are rubbing against each other. It's this bottom lever that's bent down. I'm gonna just try and bend it back, and if something breaks, we'll panic. All right, we got clicking. That was an easy fix. Check it out. Whoa! You wanna know a secret? I used Goof Off on this. There was something gummy inside the shifter that the penetrating fluid was just not helping with, so now we are in business. We should take the headset apart. We did blast this thing with a pressure washer after all. Man, it's a pleasure working on good parts. These are really old, but everything moves really well. Nothing's rusty and messed up. And these are normal ball bearings in here, so we can repack these with brand new grease and just get it feeling a little smoother. Nice and clean. Here are some real basic grips that we don't have to pay for. They came off an old bike. They're used, but they're in great condition. And the ends on the bar are fine, so we don't have to worry about anybody getting core sampled. You see, you start trying to push a grip on, only goes so far, and then it just kind of goes, it's like pushing rope. So, get your air compressor under there. that's it. We got brand new grips on here. Changing out cables on a bike is one of the best ways to make it run like new. Shifter cables, brake cables, all that stuff. And if you've ever looked online for a set of cables, they cost a lot, but there's a way cheaper way to buy cables, especially if you do this stuff a lot like I do, and that's by the roll. For years and years, I've just been pulling shifter cables out of this thing, so each one costs me pennies on the dollar. Definitely jumps a few gears. 1, 2, 3, and it's pretty much, that's it. There are teeth missing from the gears in both shift levers. It skips gears one way. I have a 1, 2, 3 shifter right here. I've got a 7-speed right here, which is what we need. The only problem is the shifters are built into the levers here. And I don't have replacement brake levers. I have like hydraulic disc brakes for mountain bikes. This is becoming a really expensive headache. This bike did not turn out to be the amazing deal that I thought it was. This little pad right here on the brake lever is where the shifter attached. If I do a nice, neat little cut right along there, it'll be just like a brake lever with no shifter. It will not look janky and it'll work nicely. So that could have been a disaster, but turns out these fit together rather nicely. Here at Berm Peak Customs, we're custom. The old tires were pretty dry rotted, so I found some cheap ones that we can replace them with. They're not special, they don't have some gnarly tread, but they're new, they're safe, they don't smell bad. Okay, so the original chain was on the bike. I think it's literally the chain that came with it, and it's really stretched out and worn, really dirty. I got a new chain. We are going to size it by just popping a link out here, and there she goes. Now we can install it. So now that we have the chain on, it's the moment of truth. Does this shift right? Perfect. All right, now for the front. Perfect. Okay, so we're almost done here, but the bike needs a couple of obvious things. First and most importantly, valve caps. I tried to find something that would match this 90s color over here, and this is as close as I could get. So let's get in these valve caps. And I don't know, you think we should replace the seat? Back in the 90s, gel seats were all the rage. You'd walk into any bike shop and there were gel seats everywhere. But the thing about gel seats is they weren't very good saddles. A good saddle should be smooth so that your clothing slides across it, but gel seats all had this kind of material that gripped your clothing, and so when you find them today, they all look like this. The other problem with gel seats is that they absorbed water, so if you were actually using the bike for transportation, it just turned to complete garbage. So we're gonna change out the seat, and I just so happen to have a free one, not period correct, but we're gonna put on this seat. This looks like a way different bike than we started with. Brakes work, gears work. Time for a test ride. I think this shifts smoother than my mountain bike. So this GT was a slam dunk. It's a 2020 model, barely ridden, and it was only 300 bucks. He just had this bike for a while and never really rode it, except for in front of his house trying to beat his last skidding record. The rear tire has some huge bald spots on it, and that seems like the only part of the bike that is worn out. The cassette looks like you can eat off of it, the chain looks brand new, and there's no dirt on the down tube. This thing is mint. As I said, we have somebody in mind. We're building this for a young girl. Now, I spoke to her father, and it seems like she's kind of a shredder. So she's gonna be looking for a more serious drivetrain and a more adult bike than what she's on right now. She's stepping up from a 24-inch. I'd also like to throw a shorter stem on the bike for a snappier feel, and replace some of the heavy steel components on this bike with lighter ones so we can give it a reduction in weight. I want it to be something she's proud of and feels confident on. So we can do some simple things to reconfigure the color scheme and make the bike look more grown up. So before I start ripping apart this bike to show you what I have in mind, I've got one thing I've got to do. So when we got this bike, the rear tire was already shot, but it's now decimated. And so my job here is done, and it's time to actually start working on this bike. So starting weight is 14.6 kilograms or 32 pounds, 9 ounces. So if we're dealing with an old bike, we're taking clapped out parts and replacing them with new working ones. But in this case, we're taking brand new parts off the bike, like these perfectly good handlebars. We can actually assign a value to these and get kind of a discount on the parts we're putting on. I want to put these $40 Crank Brothers pedals on the bike, but I'm taking off a set of perfectly good platform pedals, so we can assign a value of 10 to these. Now I've only spent 30. That will give me the justification to make this bike really good. For the growing rider that's getting this bike, we want to make the color scheme a little more grown up. And so I'm going to peel the decals off of this wheel. Hopefully they peel off in one piece, which they don't appear to be doing. On to the last resort, adhesive remover and a plastic scraper. Let the fun begin. Hey, thanks for the help with those stickers.
I could be there for you.
I think these wheels look way better now. Even better. And we won't have garbage all over the trails. A rear tire with a faster rolling tread does tend to work really well, and so we're gonna use this. But for the front, we're gonna use this really good Vittoria tire. It's used, but it's pretty much brand new, and at one point, I think we even had soy milk in it. It's going on the front of this bike, and it's gonna be a major upgrade. So one of the things I'm gonna do is put a wider set of handlebars on there, very slightly wider, and a shorter stem. What that's gonna do is bring the bars a little bit closer to her and give her a little bit more leverage on the front wheel. Now the spacers that fit on the top of the steerer tube are these GT ones that came with the bike. I'm gonna replace them with these carbon spacers, indiscernibly lighter. They obviously look a lot more serious. I think we're gonna go way over budget. I had a box 3, that's 200 bucks. Bike is 300, now we've spent 500. Ugh, I kinda wanna change the suspension fork. We are gonna have to dig through the parts bin. I found a used cassette from an old bike with a 50-tooth 9-speed on it. Is it a 9-speed? 1, 2, 3. I found a used box 3 9-speed derailleur. That'll work with this. I found a chain. Let's see how much better we can get this chain looking. So if you look at any of my higher end mountain bikes, they have what's called a 1x drivetrain. That is to say, there is one chainring up front and then a cassette in the rear, which is where all of your gears are. At the entry level, you normally find 3x drivetrains. It sounds fancier, but it's actually heavier, noisier, and more difficult to use. It's all one piece riveted together, and even if you started drilling it out to remove chain rings, they wouldn't work right. And so for 40 bucks, I have this. It's a set of replacement crank arms and a single speed chainring. This is gonna be much more reliable, much smoother, much easier to use, and way lighter. Pretty cool that we were able to cobble together a 1x drivetrain that works awesome and has plenty of range. Every good drivetrain has a good set of pedals. Now, what makes these better than the ones that were on the bike? Well, first of all, they got better bearings. They prevent dirt ingress, and when you're going through water and dirt, kind of nice for your pedal to work smoothly. Also, these plastic pedals with the nubs built in, if these nubs get damaged, you're not gonna have any more grip on the pedal. On these pedals, you have metal pins. They grip your shoe much better, and when you're going downhill really fast, that's important. If any of these get damaged, you can just unscrew them, replace them. So we're gonna do an even swap for the seat. The existing one's got all this neon on it. We're gonna give it a more grown-up look with a murdered out black seat. So we're building this bike for a growing rider. I want it to be special, and I think we can do better for her than this fork. Elastomer forks have basically a hot glue stick inside. It doesn't feel so good. This is an inexpensive air fork that I found online. I've experimented with these before with good results. And best of all, it's an air fork, it's adjustable. So if you're, let's say, a 10-year-old girl and you weigh like 60 pounds, we can reduce the air pressure so that it actually compresses and absorbs shock for you. We don't know what company really makes it. It's just kind of off-label and black, but I have something borderline unethical we can do. I have got a Fox 34 decal kit. I just want to see what it looks like if I put it on this fork. She wants her bike to look cool. She wants her bike to look grown up. It looks kind of legit. I got to make sure that this gets approved by the ethics committee. Whoa. This is one of the coolest bikes we've probably built here in terms of how it looks, how big of an improvement it made. I want to put a Berm peak sticker on it. Let's put a gloss black Berm peak sticker on the flat black here. It'll be barely discernible. Only anybody who's watched this video will know that it's there. That's super slick. It's not straight, but it's super slick. Well, before we stare at it, I gotta take it for a test ride and make sure it's a proper mountain bike like I'm claiming. This is so much better than the suspension that came with it. It's like my size. I really like the geometry, actually. Oh, this bike feels right. I'm bummed to give it up, but we're actually selling it. No, we're not keeping this one. Let's go give it a real test. I case pretty good. All right, let's try it again. I think if there was anything to shake loose, we would have. So this is a sweet ride. Yeah, time to stare at it. That's over 2 pounds less. We ended up getting this bike for only 200 bucks. When I got there, neither of the brakes were working. We don't know what's wrong with them. They could just need a flush and refill, but in any case, I think this bike is very much worth 200 bucks because brand new, you can't get anything for that these days. The tires are practically new. They still have the little hairs on them. All around, it has pretty good components. Great wheels, great fork. Even the drivetrain doesn't really have anything wrong with it. Another thing we've got going for us is that Kona is kind of a cool bike. The brand has held a lot of value even today. But all is not perfect. We're gonna have to do something about the brakes. The pedals are in shambles, and I would like to modernize the drivetrain just a little bit. We can make this bike a lot better than it is without spending big money on it. And for somebody looking for a starter hardtail, this might be the perfect bike. Let's take it apart and get it over to the wash station. I don't know what all this stuff down here is. It's like literally tar that got kicked up from the road. Is really just scrubbing it do anything? So I'm gonna go grab a tire lever. Elbow grease alone doesn't seem to be doing the trick. So the good news is the fork has this protective film over the labels and you pull it off and they look brand new. The bad news is the frame, I just thought it was dirty, but really there's all this tar stuff on it. It looks really bad and I don't have a plan. Kevin's got a little bit of experience with paint work. He's having me wet sand it and the stuff is coming off and it's looking good. So once we're done with this, we'll see how bad the paint looks and decide if there's something else we have to do, but it's coming off. Kevin picked up an automotive grade clear coat. We're gonna scuff up the paint, bring the sheen back to the finish. It's not gonna look like new, but it is gonna look better. All right, definitely looks better than it did when it was covered in tar. So let's go work on the brakes and see if we can get those working while this is drying. Well, one thing's for sure, these brakes do not work. I've got a whole bunch of bleed fittings right here. Let's get to it. Ooh. These are bone dry, and so we really want to flush them out and make sure they're clean, and then fill them up. I have got a fitting for the bottom. Oh yeah, this one. Ooh. This is the messiest bleed job I've ever done. And now we'll go outside and wash these off. So now that we've done all that messy stuff, everywhere where that corrosive brake fluid has sort of eaten away paint and made bolts all rusty, we can just clean it up. So, our clear coat dried overnight and it looks good. Looks really good. Nice satin clear coat. None of that garbage that was on the frame is there. Not perfect, but let's just say I'm happy with it. We are changing to a shorter stem. This actually came off the GT. Wow, no rubbing, everything is perfect. We'll need to line up this rotor. That's it. This is a nice big 10-speed cassette. Ooh, SRAM X7. This ain't a bad derailleur. It's a 40 tooth. So this will work as a 1x on a 26-inch bike. These are pretty nice hubs. So this is the original crankset. had these 3 rings on it. We're gonna change it out for this 1 single speed chain ring. I feel like with Oscar here, I'm teaching my son how to work on a bike, and someday he'll know how to use all these tools from being on the bench, watching from 4 centimeters away. All right, we've done this once or twice. I cleaned up these grips really good. Gonna reuse them, there's nothing wrong with them. That's gonna save us a buck or 2. So for what it's worth, just to freshen up the look of the bike, I'm gonna install these bolt-on skewers. They technically decrease the weight, they can't get caught on things, and they make the bike look a little bit more streamlined. A lot of this is about cosmetics. One of the last things we have to do is install pedals, and the ones that were on it are not going to do. So I have these red ones, and they match some of the accents on the bike, but this bike is subtle, it deserves something a little more serious. So Kevin installed new pedals on his bike, and his old ones were shot, or so he said. He said, these are no good anymore. That very well might be the case, but I'm willing to bet it is not. These have never been opened before. I can see the factory thread locker on the screws. Ooh. Oh yeah, bone dry. Any grease is certainly better than none. So on these pedals, there's a little screw that goes in the end right here. When you force the axis in, the extra grease will come out of the end of the pedal. So I'm just gonna put a nice big glob of grease in here, and then we're gonna kind of spin the axis in there. It's just extruding grease out of the end of the pedal there. Okay, now listen to this pedal. You hear that? Neither do I. So we've got these cleaned up now. Now I have to get all these pins out. Now, most of them are mashed up. I'm gonna have to take a plier and twist them out by force. I put tape over any spot that had some pattern on it. The rest, we're just gonna paint flat black. Some really high quality paint with hardener. I knew these would look better, but if you just glance at them, they look like brand new stamp pedals. I mean, this is insane. Brand new pins, bushings work just like new. This is gonna add real value to this bike, and it didn't cost us anything. Kevin was ready to throw these away, and I was like, dude, let me see if I can fix those. Let's see what they look like on the bike. Okay. So I'm looking at the bike, and there's nothing wrong with the seat. It's a perfectly good seat, but I think I have one that suits the bike better, so I'm gonna swap it. I know I'm obsessing over looks a lot, but that's what sells it. I think this might be the one where we can claim some degree of success, but we haven't listed it yet and haven't gotten any inquiries yet. And we haven't stared at it yet. So I got a chance to really look over this bike, and it's fairly high end, at least in terms of what's on it. It's only 29 pounds, which is really light. That's lighter than my trail bike. The tires have plenty of meat on them, and all around you can see that the previous owner was pretty concerned with what they put on the bike. But it's not perfect, it definitely needs some work. The brakes don't really work, they probably need a bleed. These are definitely some weird grips they put on here. The linkage is really ugly. There's not much we can do about that. I also discovered that the shifters and brakes are all built into the same lever. That's gonna present a problem if we wanna upgrade the drivetrain, because it means we would also need to upgrade the brakes. That could get very expensive. Otherwise, the bike just needs a really good cleaning. So let's get it over to the wash station and dig in. So there are a bunch of black parts in the bike, like these cranks, that have lots of visible scratches. And instead of repainting them, we could just touch it up with a Sharpie to make it not look as visible. But actually, the better thing to do would be to use this black touch-up paint. It looks a lot more black than a Sharpie does, and it's automotive grade, so it's gonna hold up really well. This isn't gonna make it look perfect, but it is gonna make it stand out less, and I think it can save us a lot of time as opposed to repainting the cranks completely. While the paint is drying, there's actually a repair we need to do to the derailleur. The little gears on the derailleur are called jockey wheels, and you can see how this one is all worn down. Here it is compared to a brand new jockey wheel, which I happen to have 2 of. This is gonna make the derailleur run like new, and all I have to do is unscrew the old ones and screw the new ones on, and we are done. So originally I was just gonna break down the linkage and clean everything, but upon closer inspection, quite a bit of this is janked. As you can see, this little nylon washer is just completely crushed. We can probably find that at the hardware store, but the bearings we're not gonna be able to. As you can see, when we rotate this one, it doesn't rotate smoothly. And so the solution for that is we have to buy new ones. Now, there are 3 different types of bearing cartridges in this, and we're gonna have to measure all of them. So sometimes you can just read the writing on the bearing and order new ones, but if you have a caliper, measure the inside diameter, the outside diameter, and then the thickness of it. And those 3 measurements are gonna be what bearing you need. So if you type in 8 by 16 by 5, you're gonna find a whole bunch of bearings. They're all pretty much the same thing. Order the one you can get the quickest, and that's what we're doing. These are not expensive. You can get a digital caliper on Amazon for like 10 bucks. One of the things that stuck out to me about this bike is how messy everything up at the fork looks. And part of that are these zip ties, but there's also the V-brake mounts, which are completely unnecessary. These posts are made to mount an older type of brake, and this bike has disc brakes, so we can just unscrew them and fill them in with some other bolt. But as I'm getting into it here, it looks like this front brake hose is in pretty bad shape. To replace it, we need to, of course, remove the old hose, measure up a new one, cut it to size, and then install new hardware onto the ends. The hardware is made up of barbs and olives. The barb is the interface between the lever or the caliper of the brakes, and the olive kind of seals it up. The olives just kind of slide on, and the barbs get pressed in with this special tool. Now, if you don't have one of these tools, some hose kits come with these little plastic clamps. To be honest, I don't really know what they're for, but it looks like you could use them to clamp the hose in place and then hammer the barb in yourself with a hammer. It's kind of handy. Once you have the new hose installed, of course you need to fill the system back up with brake fluid, which in this case is mineral oil, or baby oil seems to work okay. We'll push it up through the bottom with a syringe, and once we know all the bubbles are out, the brakes should work like new. And without those V-brake mounts in the way, we can fashion a new clamp to get rid of those old janky zip ties. I certainly feel better with that new brake hose. I'm gonna take apart the cockpit here and see if we can make it look a little bit better. There are BMX grips on this thing. Yeah, that's what they did. It's an animal BMX grip with a flange, and they cut the flange off. So I have these grips. They're not anything special, but at the same time, they're not BMX grips with the flanges cut off. They look a little bit more official. The brake lever, you push the brake lever down to shift. So this is a mountain bike with drifters.
So is brifter a real word?
I did not make this up. Brifter is a real word that people use to describe brakes that have shifters built into them.
So check this out. Let's say you're going like hard in the paint, right?
Right.
And you're like, oh snap, hit the turn. Instead of braking, you downshift.
Yeah, there's lots of different reasons why they probably don't do this anymore. So I don't know how many times we can go through the same things, but we are truing this wheel. We're gonna make it straight by using tension on the spokes. Yeah, it looks like we opened up a little can of worms here. Hopefully we have a spoke nipple that will fit this. Yeah, this nipple fits. Yeah, I'm definitely gonna replace this nipple as well. Yeah, see, this thing is just totally destroyed. I can't even turn it. I'm just trying to get it off of the bike. That's no good. So we replaced like 85 spoke nipples. Every time one spoke pops, another one does, and then you just mar up the nipples, and yeah. All is well that ends well. Let's get this back on the bike and actually put it back together. So it's Saturday and a beautiful thing just arrived. All of our bearings, but because it's Saturday, I'm on little girl duty. Here, you want a baby biscuit? Here. Alexa, play Coco Melon.
Here's some music by Coco Melon.
This bearing press is really handy. It just really evenly presses the bearing in. You just know 100% you're doing it right. Okay, so now I just have to remember how this goes back together. There are a lot of little bushings and things that we gotta get right.
Hi, Bobby!
That's mommy to the rescue, and we can actually make this look like a bike now. Now to get this bike ready for listing, I'm gonna put a set of egg beaters on it and I'm gonna offer them for an additional price. People who ride XC usually have pedals that they like, so these are gonna be optional if they have a set of pedals that they would rather use. So last few finishing touches and I think we're done. We cleaned this bike up from top to bottom. We fixed some issues with the wheels, replaced all the linkage bearings. It even got to work with a set of vintage mountain bike brifters. We gave it a tune-up up and down, and now there's only one thing left to do before we list it. Stare at it. So, what do I like about this bike? Well, first of all, the chain rings are bolted on. We don't have to change the crankset or anything if we want to upgrade the drivetrain. Even that GT that we upgraded had riveted chain rings. And overall, this is like a blank slate. It's a hardtail. It's got pretty decent geometry. Now, there are a couple of downsides on this bike. First of all, it does have Schrader valves, which usually date a bike or make it look a little more low end. There is a fair bit of rust around it, especially on the little nuts and bolts and things, which we're gonna have to change if we want it to be showroom ready. It's not even that dirty. We can just pretty much start working on it. So let's start ripping it apart and come up with a plan. in order to get the crank off, you have to use a crank puller. It's this little tool that threads into the outside of the crank, and then it pushes on the spindle and yanks it out. Still don't want to come off. I tried to pull this off with my crank puller, and it damn near pulled all the threads out of this thing. It begins. No prayer. Ooh. Could have just cleaned it. I do want to try and make good and get this crank set off. Didn't budge. Not even slightly. Well, why don't you just take the whole thing and put it back and put the bike back together? I'm not going to sell a bike with a seized crank set because I know that as soon as the bottom bracket goes bad, the person is absolutely screwed. And the person who sold it to me didn't know that, assuming. But I do, and so ethically, I'm not gonna do that. I'm well aware of how easy it is to pull threads out of the outside of a crank, but I'm telling you, this crank is so seized on. I don't care what kind of a crank puller you have. That worked. This is the crank arm, and this is the spindle inside of it. It's not even budging. I have another flip bike that I have not revealed yet, and it's got a perfectly good crank set on it that I am planning on replacing for the build. So I'm gonna grab that crank set, we're gonna do a crank transplant and move forwards. If I make $1 on this bike, it's better than losing $150. So let's see what we can recoup from this. People ask in the comments all the time, how much time do you spend on this? Because you have to factor that in. Most of what we do could be done in a few hours. If you just have your head down doing it, some of it is planning out the video to make it a good video. If we try and play the game of how to run a successful business flipping bikes, very few people are gonna be able to do it. There's so little money to be made. What I hope to gain from these videos is show you how you could buy a used bike and actually make it more valuable for yourself. Okay, so I've actually never taken apart one of these Suntour forks, but this tool is designed to make it easier. How many times have you put a big old wrench around one of these and marred up all the plastic? I highly doubt it's gonna run any differently than it does right now when we're done, but I had to do it once in my life. I've never serviced a Suntour fork because nobody services these. My goodness. I don't believe I have a socket extension that's 2 feet long. It's almost like it's a real fork. This fork you could probably get brand new for like 90 bucks. It is actually impressive that it's so serviceable, to be completely honest. When a bike comes with a nicer fork, I really should take the time to service it. If you want to be able to service every fork that comes in the shop and you're dealing with old bikes, there's so many different weights of oil and service kits and grease. I don't want to get another brand worth of stuff, but this was easy. All I needed was a little tube of grease. Ooh, that feels smooth. There we go. You know what? It's pretty freaking smooth. Next, let's get the cockpit going and the wheels. Let's get this looking like a bike. This is a freewheel. You don't need a chain whip to get a freewheel off. You just turn it. It's all one piece. And we're gonna take it off so we can take off this dork disc, because the dork disc is all yellowed and we can really upgrade the bike by taking this old cracked piece of garbage off. Yeah, I'm gonna put in orange rotor bolts. I don't have red ones, but I wanna make it look like the bike was worked over. I want things to look new. Existing skewers are rusted everywhere. Not a good look. Gonna put on these bolt-on skewers. So one thing that looks really bad when you're looking at a bike is like rusty bolts, right? You look at that and it's like, this thing was neglected. So I have these are water bottle cage bolts. When you can fill in these holes with a nice shiny bolt, it really makes the bike look well cared for. What do you think? You think it's worth putting the red pedals on?
I think so, because you got red caps and then you have the red pedals and it's very soft.
Pedals, bolts, accents, all the little finishing touches. I have no idea whether we made a profit on this bike or even what I'm gonna sell it at, but I think it's time to stare at it. So this bike is actually gonna be for our dog groomer, Heather. She's the only person who will agree to groom Oscar. He's kind of a nightmare. She calls him her special needs pup. And she mentioned the other day that she's looking for a hardtail. Now she's already got a really good full suspension bike, but she wants a hardtail for towing her son. And she wants a bike that's just gonna get kind of a different type of abuse. And we can give her a really good towing gear so she can pull her son up those hills. She was very sheepish about it. She's like, you don't have to build me anything special. I'll give you free grooms to pay for it. We're gonna hook her up. It's the holiday season. Let's just go to town on this thing and see what we can do. So let's talk about the bike. Now it comes with a really good suspension fork, and although there are lots of scratches on the crown from the cables, there are no scratches on the stanchions, and I think we can take this thing apart, clean it up, have it running like new. The amount of scratches and worn away paint on this bike are just unbelievable, but it's not gonna rust because it's aluminum, and we can touch those things up. Now Heather told me she likes green and purple, so we're gonna try and theme it a little bit. So with that, let's get this bike cleaned up, and I'll show you what I have in mind. So first order of business is this suspension fork. It doesn't look like it's been serviced in some time. I wanna get inside it and make sure the oil's fresh, everything's cleaned up. So let's dig in. This is quite disgusting. It's like mustard colored, and it's like a golden color when it's brand new, so. Ugh. Wouldn't it be nice if I had gloves? Oh, I only have 100? Last thing I want to do is get into any sort of paint projects, but can use some paint. So we got our stanchions and crown repainted, looks super shiny and nice. And our lowers, I mean, it looks like a brand new set of lowers. These used to be completely scratched up. So Marzocchi is indeed owned by Fox Suspension, but back when this fork was made, they weren't. But they are now, and I have Fox stickers. I don't have Marzocchi stickers, so that's what's going on here. Just like it did before, this just feels so stiff. There's gotta be a reason for that.
Well, the scary part is that you get nothing and then like the hard hit of something hitting the oil.
I heard if you put too much oil in here, it hydro locks.
Sure will. And then real bad stuff happens, like this goes, shoots out the top, that comes out that way.
Pat like instantly found an exploded PDF of this fork, and it looks like I put way too much oil in it. It's supposed to take only 180 milliliters, not 250. When we removed some of the oil, it started performing much better, but it still sounds like macaroni in a pot. We got a usable fork. Still makes the same sound, but apparently that's what they sound like. I watched a YouTube video on it. I'm going full on wet sand. There's no other way that I'm gonna get this thing perfectly clean. See this right here? Light wet sanding with 600 grit. Bright white again. Okay, so the entire bike has been wet sanded, and aside from the parts of the paint that are pitted, it looks pretty much perfect. So why not just always do that? Well, look at it right now while it's wet and watch what happens as it dries. The paint's all completely dull now because we absolutely dulled the clear coat and in some cases removed it entirely. So we're gonna have to put a new clear coat on the bike to make it shine again. All right, it's time we put the shine back in this bike frame or make a really big mess. So while we got all the paint stuff out, we're in paint hell. We'll paint the brake levers, the little rings around the grips. Yeah, today's gonna suck. This lever looks brand new. I'm so excited about it. Grips look awesome. It's time to stop messing around with paint and get the rest of these parts prepped. So the rotors have seen better days. We're gonna take them off, sand them down, and then reinstall them with colored rotor bolts to give the bike a little pop of color. It was really hard to get the tires off. They were like seated in. Now, it doesn't say anywhere on here that these are tubeless ready, but I bet you they're gonna go tubeless pretty easy. If you wanna make wheels that are not necessarily tubeless, what you have to do is pile up the rim tape just a little bit extra so you can make that seal. And I just so happen to have some Schrader tubeless valve stems from Miles Wide. So we're gonna give that a try right now, see if they seal up. All right, so I have no sealant in here. Let me see if it sort of seals up. Okay.
How is it holding air?
You can't even believe it, right? All I gotta do is drop some sealant in there. How you doing? Pretty good. That's gotta be our stem, which is good because I can't build this bike without the stem. So from the parts bin, I have these handlebars, and off the original bike, I have this seat post. They both have red on them, which doesn't match the color scheme, so we're gonna paint over it. But in the case of these P&W bars, I don't wanna hide the logo because it's a cool company, it's a cool part. And so I think if I paint over it lightly, it'll still show through because of the relief. We went way overboard with almost everything on this. We have all the parts laid out. So we're gonna slap a seat post in it, get this bike up on the stand, and start making it look like something that you can actually ride. We managed to scrounge together a 9-speed drivetrain. The only thing that's really used is the cassettes. Again, we can put it back in the parts bin and make a bike that's barely working work great. These platform pedals came with my new bike. I used different ones, so we have some nice metal pedals to put on this thing with replaceable pins and everything. So the shifter cables on these older mountain bikes go in segments. So you have all these different interfaces along the way. They don't really do that anymore because they're just more areas for dirt ingress into your cable housing. I'm gonna actually drill these out so that we can run the cable all the way up to the front with no breaks in the cable. So I'm trying to complement these green lever grips with some splashes of green around the bike, and it's just not working. I think we're gonna go all purple. I think I'm gonna take these off. We take color coordination very seriously here at Flip Bike. I feel like the caps on the outside of the disc brakes, I gotta stop. Sometimes the best thing you could do when you're color customizing a bike is show some freaking restraint. It doesn't need more. This bike is sick. I just want to stare at it. So what's worse, abuse or neglect? Mountain bikes, I think, like to be used. This one's been sitting around for a really long time. It's lived a pretty hard life outside. Perfectly good working bottom bracket. Chris King headset, no egregious parts whatsoever. They're just in really bad condition. And come to think of it, I can't even really figure out what type of bike it is. So hopefully this bike isn't a money pit. Let's break it down and see what we find. So I've really dug into this bike. Everything's apart and they're really dirty. So I have years of neglect to wash off of these parts, but a lot of them are pretty good. And most of the stuff that's rusty and needs replacement is really cheap, just hardware. So it's a new day. I'm off to the hardware store to find replacements for these bolts and a better solution for this hodgepodge of washers. Whoever had the bike last used all these washers to try and center the shock. I think nylon washers would probably be more appropriate. As for the things we couldn't find at the hardware store, I have some rust remover, so we'll clean up the old stuff as best we can. So we'll do all the cleaning at once, the prepping, repairing individual parts, and of course the painting. And because we've been doing more painting, I got something. This thing, it's like a tent. It's got all sorts of features that make it good for painting. I would have just bought a camping tent, but this cost less. Yeah, I don't have to get paint all over my garage anymore. This is pretty sweet. I considered going with something fun, but settled on graphite. Painting it lime green or mustard yellow might limit our buyers, and so this will keep things on the up and up. And while the first coat of paint hardens, I can start getting to work on some of the other components that are in need of help. I was gonna sandblast this stuff, but it's coming right off with brake cleaner, which isn't a good sign. Serious question, are we spending too much time to restore 2 mechanical brake calipers? Absolutely. But if you're broke and you want a mountain bike that rides and looks like new, you can spend a rainy weekend doing this and put sweat equity into a really inexpensive bike that just needs some work. Brake lever's riveted in, so I'm masking it. I'm just gonna touch it up, but if these are the original brakes, that is the date of manufacture, which puts it at 06. Can help us narrow down the bike, maybe. While the paint is curing, we have something that I hope does not end up being a waste of time, and that is this coil fork. Says right here contains high pressure nitrogen, do not dick with. We also found another piece to the puzzle. This damper is dated 2008, which tells us a little bit more about this bike's story. So it looks like we can save this fork. The only things that look bad are a few O-rings, and those we can just replace. For now, gotta clean out the lowers. This time I've got actual Marzocchi stickers. We're not gonna make a mutant out of this one. And all we have left to address are these stanchions. The only thing that's gonna bring these back to life is abrasion. So we'll start with some pretty rough sandpaper and work our way down till they're nice and smooth. And with that, we can restore this fork to its former glory by reassembling it. This particular model does not take oil, just grease. And because it is a coil fork, it should last another 400 years with semi-regular maintenance. All right, so I have spoken to the Neckbeard Council, and the consensus is, since this is an old coil shock, if the rebound works, let it ride. Don't take it apart. We have the rebound all the way open. Okay, let's close it up. Oh yeah. Rebound works. I am going to accept the advice from the Neckbeard Council, AKA Pat. Let's put it back on the bike. Actually, let's get this bike together. Time to get all the parts figured out. Now, first of all, this is a big bike and it's got these little bitty handlebars. This is gonna be like a big person riding this bike, and by today's standard, they're not very long. So, I've got a way bigger set of bars. They've just been sitting around for ages. I also have a stem. It was actually on the knee scooter. I'm gonna put a cheaper stem back on that knee scooter. We're also gonna throw a larger cassette on this bike to make it climb better, and throw the old one back in the parts bin. So now we'll press in the headset and start making this look like a bicycle. so another way we can zero in on what type of bike this is the derailleur hanger. This is a derailleur hanger number 49 on Wheels Manufacturing. If you search Google, it's gonna come up. And it says that it fits Diamondback, GT, Jamis, Fuji, and a couple of other brands. If you think you found the bike that it fits, it's gotta have this derailleur hanger or it's not that bike. So now we're gonna set up the cockpit, and because both the shifting and brakes are cable actuated on this bike, it's a great opportunity to tell you that these cables are not one and the same. This is cable, this is housing. Brakes usually have a fatter housing and a fatter cable. The ends are gonna be different. Just something to keep in mind if you're ordering up supplies. You'll be really bummed out if you have the wrong end or the wrong width and nothing fits. There's internal cable routing from here to here. In newer bikes, there's like a little plastic tube inside it that guides the cable. It coming out this hole is like a fantasy, but I got a tool for that. These two wires are magnetic, so when you fish them through the frame, they find each other. Then you can tape it to your housing and pull it through. Right out, there we go. Oh man, this is a dramatically different bike than we started with. Oh man, damn. I think it's time to stare at it. So today we have a Trek Marlin that's actually been sitting around here for a little bit. You might have seen it. We stole the crankset off of it for another flip bike. I was planning on replacing it anyway, so no big deal. Now I got this bike off a neighbor with a little bit of bartering, and I would put the value at about $250, which is a good deal for this, but at the same time, it's not perfect and it's a little bit outdated. So of course, first of all, bike needs a new drivetrain. I robbed the crankset. We're gonna give it a 1x so that it looks more modern, it's easier to use, and it's a little bit more mechanically sound, quiet. Second, this is a cross-country bike, and in this area, it's not so easy to sell a cross-country bike. Everybody wants a trail bike. It came with these little tiny bars. I don't know whether the previous owner cut them down. We could probably use those on like a fixie or something like that, but definitely getting wider bars and a shorter stem. It also has a few problems. The wheels are not perfectly straight. The front disc rotor has a little bit of a wobble in it, you can hear it, and the fork feels like it could use a good service. It's also come down with a case of whiskey grips. If a bike is really outdated, it could be nostalgic, vintage, charming. This is a little bit outdated, like the Harlem Shake. They really went to town on the white color scheme here, which was fine for its day, but it definitely dates it. The cable housings are all white. The crown of the fork is white, and they're just white accents everywhere. I think we can leave most of them, but maybe change some colors around to just make the bike feel newer and more up to date. Now, one thing that the bike really has going for it is that it's a 29er. Everybody's looking for 29ers now, especially larger riders who would ride this bike. And so I really think that's gonna help us when we go to sell it. So let's get this bike broken down, give it a good cleaning, and see what we can do with it. This fork is actually in pretty good condition, but it's been sitting around for a while, so it could use a good cleaning, and the white crown is a little much. I think I'm gonna change it to black, and it's not a bad fork. It's one of the better Suntour forks because it has a lockout, and at this point we've serviced quite a few of these Suntour forks, and so we can jump right into it. Wow, everything looks really clean in there. You do this with a pair of vice grips or a channel lock, and this plastic's gonna get marred up real good. So pretty cool to see how this works. This is the side with the lockout, and it's not a damper, it is a lockout. And you can see here, when these two are together, it is absolutely locked. Turn it one click, and it moves freely. Pretty cool. I want to give it enough time to cure before I sell it. The longer we wait, the harder the paint is going to be, and the more durable it's going to be for the next owner. In the meantime, we need to make a couple of little tiny stickers that we took off the fork. It's a little detail that we probably don't have to do, but that's what we're going to do. I printed out some extra ones in case we have that same fork in the shop again. We are going to apply them and then seal them in with some clear coat. Crown is looking really, really good. I think if I'm careful with it, we could put all this back together, make this fork whole. Nothing wrong with something looking a little bit Bontrager-y, but this is very Bontrager-y. And so yeah, we're gonna paint this seat. Now, I've done this before. Painting vinyl is actually not that big of a deal. You just rough it up like you would anything else and then put very, very light coats on it. You can use special vinyl spray paint, but it's actually not that much different from just Krylon. So both these wheels need a really good thorough cleaning, lots of dog poop and grime on them, and then we're gonna service both of them. Okay, so this wheel is a little bit out of true, and the rotor is way out of true. Now, I have this handy little rotor truing attachment on my stand, and I'm gonna show you how it works. This little gauge over here tells me where the rotor is bent the most, and it seems like it got stuck on something and pulled out right there. So now, I'm gonna grab this spot with my truing fork, and I'm gonna give it a good push. And let's see how far off we are now. Now it's not hitting the gauge anymore, so I'm gonna push the gauge in a little bit more until it does hit something. All right, I'm happy. That's about as good as we're gonna get it, so we're done with the wheels and we can move on to putting this bike together. So remember that full suspension bike that we absolutely overhauled and then sold for way too cheap? These are the handlebars from it, and actually we replaced those bars with wider ones, but compared to the ones on this bike, these are gargantuan. So it's gonna get wider bars. These are a little bit marked up, and so we're gonna throw some paint on them. So the idea here was not to totally repaint the bars, but rather to make all the scratches and stuff less visible. I wanted to leave the Rocky Mountain Bike logo. It's a name brand, it's good company. Now, as for the stem, I've been using these Husfeld stems from SRAM. They're pretty good and they're really cheap. This derailleur has seen a lot of miles. So has this cassette, but they don't look bad. There's nothing wrong with them. I'm just gonna have to do a lot of cleaning and a real good once over on them, and I think we can get away with this. So the drivetrain cleaned up really nice. Kind of gnarly. This has definitely seen some action, but there's nothing wrong with it, and he's getting a 50-tooth cassette, which is an enormous upgrade. Pedals. I've got a used set of Crank Brothers Stamp 1 pedals. They're very large. Here it is compared to a standard size pedal, but this is a large bike, so that's gonna be perfect. Aside from the whiskey grip problem, which we could solve with some alcohol, these aren't that bad. I'm just concerned about safety. This end over here is, yeah, it's all chewed up. We can't use this. So I found a set of used grips that are in near perfect condition. They just need to be cleaned up, and we'll put bar caps on them. So with that, we've got more or less everything we need to put this bike back together. I do have a few surprises in store, but let's get started. So these are ball bearings from the headset, and this is a race. The ball bearings roll along this, and that is what makes them work. Now, this particular race is the crown race. It goes on top of the crown of the fork, and has to get pressed down. We could keep tapping it with a hammer until it goes down, but it is very imperative that we do not dent or scratch the surface of the race, because any imperfections are going to be felt when steering the bicycle. And so we have a special tool to set the crown race. Okay, so now we're ready to put on this stem, but we have about 30 millimeters of spacers right here. We're gonna do something special instead of these spacers. This is a 10 millimeter headset spacer, and this is part of a stanchion from a Fox 36. Pat gave this to me because he's been cutting pieces off of it to make headset spacers, and it's gold, it's got a Kashima coating, probably make the bike go faster, so let's cut 30 millimeters off of here and use it on that bike. And just like that, a Berm Peak Customs headset spacer. Wow, gold looks really, really good on this bike. And I have a gold chain. So granted, this chain is used, but it was a very, very good chain when it was new. The only problem is, it's in two pieces. To put it back together safely, we're gonna use some master links, and we're gonna put it on the bike with a couple of different color links. I don't think anybody's gonna notice. If you just stand back and soak it all in, it's not noticeable. I think there's something to be said for really clean cable routing, and so we're gonna leave a piece of heat shrink tubing on the front cable housing. Then when we're all finished, instead of putting zip ties around it to make it neat, we'll just hit it with a heat gun. It'll shrink around it and look absolutely perfect. It was a good bike originally. We could have just fixed it up, but we turned it into a really serious bike, and whatever we sell this for, you'd be hard pressed to find something like that new, especially right now. I think it's time to soak it in and stare at it. This is a 24-inch kids bike that was part of a larger bulk purchase that I made, about 45 bucks, and I'd say that's a fair price for this bike. It has definitely seen its better days. It was left outside for a long time and it was neglected, but before that, it was loved. You can tell by all the stickers and the wear and the parts that were changed out that somebody wanted to keep this bike running at one point, but like all kids' bikes, somebody grew out of it and it got sold, left in the backyard. Now, while this bike didn't cost me very much money, I do think it's gonna be difficult to turn a profit on it. Just replacing the worn tires in this bike could quickly exceed what I paid for it. So this is gonna be sort of a passion project to put a good kid's bike back on the trail and hopefully change somebody's life. Now, aside from the rust and neglect and desperate need for service, there's not a whole lot wrong with this bike. The bottom bracket seems okay, there are no dents or bent parts, and in fact, with a little cleaning, it looks like this frame is in pretty good condition. I think once we fix it up, we can make the color scheme a little bit more fun for a kid, and so if we do the right thing by this bike, it can be put back on the trail and loved again. So let's break it down and see what we can do. This is a square taper crankset, which is really common in bikes at this price point, and you really need a crank puller to get it out. So this outer piece threads into the crank arm, and then as you turn this, it pushes against the spindle and pulls the crank arm out. So we've got everything laid out here on the bench. Some of these parts I'm gonna replace, some I'm gonna restore. But one of the cheapest things you can get replacements for are bolts, and new shiny bolts always look good. And we can go to the hardware store prepared because I now have a thread checker. So they actually have one of these at every hardware store, and I ordered the same one that they have at my local hardware store. So this bolt is an M8 1.25. M is metric, 8 is the size, and then 1.25 is the thread pitch. Then if you want to measure the length of it, you can just use a ruler. This derailleur would be pretty tough to clean up. It's been really, really neglected. Luckily, I nabbed this one off another flip bike. It's identical, and I don't know when else I would use a 6-speed tourney derailleur, and so it's going on this bike. Suntour coil forks don't need that much maintenance as long as you keep them clean, but this one has spent quite a bit of time in the elements. This is a kid's bike, and so I want to make it fun, and so we're going to take a little chance this time. I think if it comes out shiny and nice and it doesn't look like a DIY job, it's going to be pretty cool. So we painted the lowers of the fork a fun color, we touched up the crown with a glossy black, and we even painted the crankset and bash ring flat black, along with the seat which had that outdated white stripe on it. There are a few parts that we haven't cleaned up yet, the frame and the wheels. Before you start scraping and peeling and using Goo Gone to get stickers off, try adding some heat to it. Just a little bit sometimes is enough where the sticker will just peel off. It also doesn't work sometimes, like with the sticker on this head tube, and then you gotta get it off the hard way. They're dirty, but the wheels are in good condition. The hubs are also in good condition. They spin really smoothly, but they're kind of dry, so we're going to rebuild them. Just means take it completely apart, replace all the cheap stuff, and put it back together. In this case, we're just gonna clean it out and put new grease in it, put it back together, and we're good to go. That's a nice smooth hub. The tires that were on the bike were cooked and they're 1.95 width. I found fatter ones that are gonna fit on Walmart.com. They're 2.0, so they're gonna be a little wider. They're not like high end or anything, but they're Blackburn. It's a name brand. I admit, this is a pretty wild looking fork, but we'll see what it looks like on the bike. So we've totally broken this bike down to the nuts and bolts, cleaned everything up, and I've made a choice parts bin selection to improve some of the parts that were on there. And I'm hoping, because it's small, I can test it. I don't have long enough bolts in stock for the bash ring, so we're gonna have to do without it. But on the bright side, it is steel and it'll save a little bit of weight. So the original handlebars were these rusty steel ones, which even for a kid's bike are kind of narrow. I redid that Trek, which was for a full-grown man. These bars were narrow for a full-grown man, but for a little kid, they're pretty wide. And they're aluminum, so they're lightweight. So because this side gets the grip shifter, we have to measure and cut it down. And because they're fun and functional, both sides are gonna get sticky fingers, brake lever grips. And to lubricate them, we're gonna spray alcohol inside, and then it should dry up by the time we're done with this bike, nice and grippy. This bike is all but done, and I am pretty excited about it because you can get a big bike and try to adjust it for a little kid, but it's not the same. And if you do what most parents do and get a really cheap kid's bike, it's gonna be really heavy. So having a really good, affordable used bike like this on the market is gonna be really, really good for some lucky 8-year-old. So with that, I think it's time we stared at it. So, this bike would feel like kind of a small dirt jumper to me, and so I'm just gonna take it to Snake Pit and see if she goes. It doesn't feel like a little dirt jumper, it feels like a miniature bike. Oh. All right, one more run up. Trying to make sure I have enough speed. This is to date the nicest bike we have ever bought on Flip Bike, but it needs work and I might have overpaid for it. Let's take a look at it. It was $750, listed at $850, mind you. It is a size small. Small men, women, and kids are all looking for size small, and they are in short supply. I think $750 is a good price for this. It's got really good Fox suspension. It's got through axles, a Dior XT drivetrain, hydraulic disc brakes, internal cable routing. It's dropper post ready. These would have been pretty cutting edge features back in 2013. And although this bike has been used really hard, there's not much evidence of major crashes. It's just been ridden a lot of miles with very long service intervals. And there are certain indicators around the bike, like the way this quick release was secured and this inner tube shim on the handlebars, that this bike has never seen a torque wrench, probably has the original bearings and the linkage, and we can safely assume the suspension was last serviced a really long time ago. My friends, we have a lot of work to do. Break something. Oh my God. I am going to snap this. Oh, got it. I know who's getting this bike. It's the daughter of a family friend. She's only 5 feet tall, and so a small adult bike with 26-inch wheels is actually a pretty good fit. And there's nothing wrong with this bike that I can't repair. The whole bike is apart now, so I have to clean everything. The drivetrain parts, the nuts, bolts, suspension, get all the dirt off of it. And then we're gonna get into the hairy stuff, servicing the suspension and putting the linkage back together, pressing new bearings in there. So here's an interesting thought. We can only assume that occasionally the previous owner of the bike sees this video and maybe they feel some kind of embarrassment because they didn't get the suspension service. They didn't take care of it the way you're supposed to. The opposite is somebody who just works on their bike all the time and never rides it. And so by the looks of this bike, it had a pretty good life with its previous owner, saw a lot of time on the trails and just not a lot of time being wrenched on. For a 10-year-old fork, this is in superb condition. Let's see if the inside is. I think at some point this bike was sitting for a really long time because I'm not finding anything that's super dirty or worn. It's just dry. None of my bikes have 32mm stanchions, and so I don't have a seal driver for one. I'm 3D printing one. Bearings. So most of the hairy stuff is done. We've replaced all the linkage bearings, we put all the linkage back together, installed the rear shock, replaced the headset, and installed the fork. I even installed a new stem and handlebars, those old carbon ones. I don't know what they've been through, and my main priority is safety. But before we put the rest of the bike together, there are a few little things we need to sort out. For example, what drivetrain are we gonna put on this? I have a whole bunch of SRAM stuff, and this rear wheel does not have a SRAM free hub body. I don't know what these are, Bontrager hubs or something. I actually had a SRAM XD free hub driver that fit this wheel, and so now I have a really good drivetrain option for this bike. Should be perfect. These rotors have plenty of life left in them. I just gotta clean them up really good and give them a light sanding. So these wheels are actually tubeless ready. We could easily go tubeless here, but I'm not going to. It's easier to install valves and put in sealant than to clean out a bunch of sealant and go back to inner tubes, and so I'm gonna let them make that decision. Maybe I'm nitpicking. This factory brake hose is just a tad too long. I can't unsee it, and so let's shorten it. I just had a whole wrench thrown into my operation. That SRAM free hub body sits too close to the frame. And so we're putting the Shimano one back on and installing this Box 1 drivetrain. Super expensive and super low gear for a 26-inch wheel. If she's ever in the lowest gear on this thing, you know it's been a rough day. So the bike came with these pedals and they are perfectly fine. All I have to do is clean them up, but we've already spent a whole bunch on this bike. Let's just overkill. All right, I gotta clean my shop and then we should stare at this thing. I ended up paying $250 cash for this bike, plus I traded some stuff, and so let's call it $325. That is a really good deal because it comes with a few things. First of all, it comes with a very lightly used Cane Creek headset, probably $120 brand new. It does in fact come with a dropper post and a lever and a SRAM dub bottom bracket, which is also in very good working order. And so this purchase was very easy to justify, but what got me really excited about it was this feature right over here. We can adjust the length of the chainstay by a small amount. Why would somebody want to do that? All right, I think I mostly have what we need here. And then the rest of it is right here. A friend of mine supplied these. I suspect I'm gonna owe him a lot of bike parts to make good on this. These are 29-inch Forge and Bond carbon wheels with Industry 9 hubs. And as you can see, it comes with an XD driver body. That's for SRAM cassettes, but I'm actually not going to put a cassette on this wheel at all. This bike is gonna be a single speed. This is gonna make the bike simple, fun, reliable, and completely impractical. So we've adjusted the chain to as close as we can for this bike. Now it's easier to understand why this bike has an adjustable dropout. We can increase the length of the chainstay very slightly and put perfect tension on the chain, and we don't need a derailleur. So now you might be thinking, great, the chain has perfect tension. Now what? We've got a bike that you can't really climb with, and what's worse, it's got gigantic tires. Why would you put 2.8-inch mountain bike tires on a bike that you can't even climb with? Well, you haven't seen the fork yet. A fully rigid fork, not just any fully rigid fork, a 29-inch suspension adjusted through axle 110 millimeter fork. So it is used, and it is the color silver. At first that bothered me, but then I realized it matches the Salsa logo on the down tube. I think I'm gonna use some restraint and leave it and get this bike built. Salsa is a sister company to Surly. They make a lot of gravel and bike packing stuff, and also frames like this that can be converted easily to single speed. There's not much to this bike because it doesn't have a drivetrain. I just need to run this hydraulic brake hose through the frame. Of course, I'm using a set of Shimano MT200s. They're really inexpensive brakes. You can get them for about 55 bucks, and they are extraordinarily reliable and high performance for the price. This was the original shift cable here, and so we can use it to snake the brake hose through the frame. This build is going really quick because there's no drivetrain. All we have to do is install a seat, a bottle cage. I'm gonna put clipless pedals on this bike because you wanna have a prayer of being able to pedal uphill. And then we can bleed the rear brake, make a few final adjustments, and stare at it. Initial impressions, this thing's geared way too high for climbing, but I already knew that. I used the gears that I had on hand, which was a 28 tooth chainring and 18 tooth rear cog with 145 millimeter cranks. With that said, I didn't have to walk anything on this climb. I was able to make it work, but if I did that every day, I would blow out my knees. And so yeah, we're gonna change the gearing on this. Now the other thing I noticed is that even on the climb, the rigid fork took some adjusting. I have to change my body position. A lot of us have a tendency to let our shoulders do the shock absorption because the suspension fork is picking up most of the load. And I feel even just making it up here, I'm a better rider for it. And having said that, it is time to descend. So I don't know if you knew this, but suspension is actually designed to keep your wheels on the ground. It's really, really easy to get air on this for that very reason. Now with that said, that's pretty much the only advantage you get on this going downhill. There's actually a much bigger difference between a full rigid and a hardtail than a hardtail and a full suspension. And that's probably why I know a lot of people who ride single speeds, but not a whole lot of people who ride full rigid bikes. That said, I do have a little bit of compliance. First of all, the tires, these are high volume. If you happen to know how to calculate the volume of a donut, you know that going from 2.5 to 2.8 is actually a lot of additional air. The other place I'm getting compliance is my handlebars. These are carbon fiber P&W handlebars, and they built a fair bit of upwards and downwards compliance into the handlebars. They don't move any other direction. I can tell you something was taking the sting out for me. Despite the fact that this bike is so simple, you'll notice that I left the dropper post. I've said in the past I would give up my suspension fork before I gave up my dropper post, and I'm actually being 100% serious. That was something I was not willing to take off the bike. So now that I've ridden the bike, I'm starting to get used to it. I'm starting to change my body position and look at things in a different way. That's why you want to have different bikes, is it makes you a better rider. It makes you better able to adapt to different scenarios. And I'm gonna give you a few additional thoughts. First of all, the bike's about 25 pounds. That is light for a trail bike, but not for a trail bike that doesn't have a drivetrain or a suspension fork. I would say the extra weight is coming from these big beefy tires and the not particularly light aluminum alloy frame. And as I said, it does have a dropper post. Another thing I noticed, these carbon wheels feel really nice, and also the valve caps have valve core wrenches in them, and so that's kind of a cool dual purpose. Also, I'm very glad that I chose to put clipless pedals on this bike, because when you're going slow and mashing and trying to get through something, yeah, being clipped in is pretty useful. Also, having thought about the gearing of this bike, the answer might be to just put longer cranks on it. I have these 5-dev 145mm cranks on the bike. They feel amazing if you have gears and you can spin efficiently. Single speed, you're almost never spinning efficiently, and so you just need leverage. So with all that said, I'm gonna keep this bike around for a little bit. I'm gonna optimize it. I'm gonna try and make it as good as possible, and then I'm gonna sell it. I recognize all the benefits of it. I recognize how fun it can be, and I have a lot of respect for people who ride bikes like these, but I just don't have it like that. Not for me. As of today's date, we are still in the middle of the bike apocalypse, and so new bikes, used bikes, they're all going for next to nothing. So it's not the time to fix up an old bike and expect to make a profit on it, but I'm having a lot of fun putting bikes back on the trail, and this is something we probably would have not normally done on Flip Bike because nobody's gonna buy that thing. But still, Salsa Timberjack, super cool bike. I think to some people, this is the coolest bike in the world. I had a lot of fun building it, I had a lot of fun riding it, and for the foreseeable future, I'm gonna be messing around on a little bit. Hope you did learn a little bit about why some people ride single speeds, and in fact, full rigids. I hope you learned something. If you didn't, I hope you at least found this entertaining. Thanks for riding with me today, and I'll see you next time.